Story 1. Lifelong Republican voter. I will preface by saying I have never been specifically a Trump fan. For me, a key line that has been crossed is the destruction of our relationship with our allies. Another significant line is entertaining the idea that the executive branch does not have to follow orders from the courts. The people voted for a president, not a king. I believe the Republican Party needs to immediately pressure Trump to reverse course on the absurd path he is on. If they cannot succeed in any meaningful way very soon, it is their duty to impeach and remove him. I will never vote Republican again in my lifetime if that does not happen, and I would consider the entire party treasonous. Story 2. I am a former Trump supporter. I voted for him in both 2016 and 2020, but not in 2024. My whole life, I was a Republican, a dedicated voter. That changed in the recent election. While I have never voted for a Democrat in my life, I did vote against Donald Trump. Like many others, January 6th was the beginning of the unraveling of my support for him, but it wasn't my breaking point. My breaking point was on December 3rd, 2022, when he posted, "A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution." Right then and there, I knew we were in serious trouble if he got back into office. He doesn't care about the United States Constitution and sees it as an obstacle in his way, rather than the foundation of our republic. Many people tried to defend him regarding that post, claiming it was taken out of context or he didn't mean it that way. But the truth is he meant exactly what he said. How do I know? That post is still up today. He never took it down. Story 3. I am a conservative who has voted Republican in every election except this one. The man has no moral compass. He crossed the red line after his last loss. Story 4. Thank you to all the conservatives who stated that today's treatment of Zelensky was their red line. I understand the comments have not been friendly, but this individual appreciates you coming forward and saying that you will not allow America to be a bully for Russian talking points. Story 5. My husband finally expressed his frustration today, which I appreciate. His main concern was betrayal. These countries do not maintain nuclear weapons because of the promises we made to protect them, and we have let them down. That was his perspective, apparently. Story 6. I have been uncertain for a few weeks. Today, Trump's disrespectful and demeaning tone towards Zelensky in the Oval Office was the final straw. Zelensky just wants his people to be free of war and to maintain their borders and rights, yet Trump accused him of not wanting peace. I do not feel good about any of this. Story 7. That meeting with Zelensky has changed my perspective. I disagreed with his stance on Ukraine before. Now, frankly, if he gets shot, I would understand. His conduct is misguided and disgraceful. Story 8. My mother voted for Trump. I had her watch the full interview with Zelensky today, without any political commentary. Afterwards, she was very quiet and said she regrets her vote. Education is power. Story 9. I know two supporters who think that everything with Musk is not right. That is the only flaw in his support that I have seen. I was surprised when they commented on a post criticizing Donald Trump and Elon Musk. I expected full support, as it has been all along. Story 10. Many people are openly admitting they changed their viewpoint. Let's strive for improvement. Story 11. Many of these reply comments are unhelpful. If you want people to stop supporting Trump, when they announce they've changed their mind, avoid attacking or treating them as if they are foolish. This approach only pushes people back to supporting MAGA. Story 12. Honestly, his foreign policy and comments about Canada, Greenland, Gaza, and now Ukraine have made it so that I cannot support him anymore. I wasn't thrilled to vote for him, but I didn't like the direction President Biden was taking the country. This direction is much worse. Story 13. I must say that this is the most encouraging thing I have encountered in the last several weeks. Well done to all of you who have the courage to take a stand. I hope that once you have done so, we can work together to defend democracy, regardless of whom you vote for next time. Story 14. The interaction with Zelensky today was, in fact, the tipping point, and I no longer support him. Story 15. I voted for Trump twice, but not this last time. You cannot be the party of law and order and support a felon over a former attorney general and district attorney. Story 16. I voted for Donald Trump when he ran against Joe Biden. However, his lack of commitment to continuing support for Ukraine caused me to vote against him this time. That was my red line. Story 17. January 6, 2021, was a turning point for me. I supported him in 2016 as I was 18 at the time, thinking he would be different from the usual lifetime politicians we always see. He was different, indeed, but I'm not sure I like it very much. Watching how he has repeatedly lied about what happened that day during his speech when he took office in 2025 was disturbing. Things have progressively gotten worse, and the misinformation being spread around is unsettling. Story 18. I have been on a very thin line since the comments about Gaza and running for a third term. This is a significant moment for me. After the interaction with Zelensky, I doubt I can be supportive much longer. Story 19. This was a time to listen. If no Trump supporters spoke, then the silence would be deafening. If they did speak, then we would learn. Stop calling them names and either let them be silent and let that sink in. I am not saying we should not criticize Trump, just not under a significant question like this that is not meant for us. I encourage the original poster to try it again and for the rest of us to read instead of typing. Edit. Nothing I said was about welcoming back, hugging, etc. It was about listening and gaining information. It seems people cannot stay quiet long enough to think. Story 20. To everyone here who is brave enough to admit this, just remember it is better to leave now than to blindly obey and regret it. I do not know if you will agree, but many Germans blindly followed Adolf Hitler, and I am sure they regretted it. It does not matter that you have only just stepped away. I urge you to try to find unbiased media. As I grew up, I escaped the propaganda and transitioned from somewhat conservative to liberal to leftist. At the end of the day, it is a top versus bottom issue, not a left versus right one. I do not hate conservatives. We are still family no matter what color, race, ethnicity, religion, gender, or sexuality. Do the right thing, pay attention to history, and recognize the patterns. Story 21. I want to thank all the former supporters of Donald Trump who are recognizing the truth about him. Thank you for acknowledging the truth, for having the humility to express regret for your choice, and for wanting better for our country. The only way we can move forward is together, united in doing what is best for all citizens. The only people who can save us from this situation are ourselves. We all need to stand up and say enough is enough. We love our country, and that is why we care. This gives me hope that Americans desire freedom, want to do the right thing, and aim to be the good guys. Story 22. Not me, but I know my brother, who mostly hates Trump but likes some of his policies. He said that if Trump tries to extend his term or run for a third time, he will draw the line at that. I sense he is coming around before that. He kind of already has, actually. Story 23. My mom supports Trump, and I believe that if he interferes with Medicare, it may cause her to reconsider her stance. She is currently undergoing cancer treatments and requires additional care. If he disrupts Medicare, it would greatly affect her. Story 24. The situation in Ukraine has completely changed my support for him. I realize now that it was a mistake to vote for him, as I didn't anticipate it would turn out this poorly. It has been a valuable learning experience. Story 25. Congratulations, Americans. This is the most civilized discussion I have seen in a while, if I ignore the name-calling. It's nice to see people admitting they feel deceived. There is nothing wrong with feeling that way. I am sure many feel this way but do not want to admit it to themselves or others, similar to being a victim of domestic abuse and thinking it will get better when you know that you should leave. I have experienced that. Story 26. My boss voted for Donald Trump. The line he crossed was when he called Volodymyr Zelensky a dictator and said that Ukraine started the war. She was very unhappy with our president making those remarks. But after today, she now hates him with a passion. She nearly started crying and had to close the video when she saw the shouting match between Zelensky and Trump. She said that now she knows too late that Trump is a monster who has no empathy for anyone but himself, and watching someone she voted for treat it like a game gives her regret that she now has to live with. Story 27. When he attacked federal workers, I officially switched party affiliations and, after over 30 years, will never vote for the Republican Party again. Story 28. I was cringing watching how he and JD handled themselves today with President Zelensky. I still believe that ending the war in Ukraine is important and benefits the American people. Story 29. I'm not a supporter by any means, but someone I know and follow on social media voted for him as a protest vote regarding Palestine. He regrets his vote now after the Gaza video came out, which was the turning point for him. He still maintains that Harris supports Palestinian genocide but concedes that she would not have been as harsh about it. Story 30. What people don't understand here is that Trump is mild compared to most of the people who support him. I am in a deep red area and have to interact with many people from this area who support Trump. What these people say and want in a comfortable, like-minded environment is unsettling. Trump could assemble squads for violence, invade Europe, establish firing lines on the border, and enact policies of generational repatriation to enthusiastic support from his base. I think the only thing that would turn Trump supporters against him is if he decided to back down on his ideas. Story 31. Attempting a third term is causing a bad recession. If he approves sending out Dogecoin checks of $5,000 instead of paying down debt or strengthening our entitlements. Story 32. I asked my dad, but he couldn't provide an answer. I suggested Auschwitz and he responded, "Oh, come on." But still did not say it would be a line. There is no line. Story 33. To all Republicans who have stopped supporting Trump, many of whom seem to have made that decision after the meeting with President Zelensky today, thank you for showing more empathy than the president does. Please do not lose it. Story 34. The way he handled COVID was significant, but after 4 years, everyone moved on. My dad and father-in-law didn't seem to support Trump at that time, but now they are all in favor of him. Even if he were to do something controversial, his supporters would overlook it. Story 35. A good friend of mine posted about politics nonstop in 2023 and 2024. In early 2025, Doge came in, made him quit his federal job, and deleted all of his Facebook posts. I feel bad for the guy who just got a house and 3 dogs. It could get very expensive quickly. Story 36. The H-1B visa has been my top political issue for over 20 years. I will have to see how it plays out. Large parts of the base are still upset about that issue. This is a policy flip-flop for the president and is very anti-America first. The complete mess of all the John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., Robert F. Kennedy, and Epstein files is alarming. What happened to transparency, or is everyone involved just lacking intelligence? Getting us involved in yet another foreign war, including Ukraine, is something we do not need to be part of. That would be the final straw. Story 37. I voted for Trump in both elections that he won. My answer is this past week. America completely abandoning Ukraine has me angry. This shows that we as a country cannot be relied upon as an ally. I see Trump supporters echoing the same talking points that pro-Putin individuals bring up about the war. They are easily feeding into Russian propaganda. Putin took the White House with more efficiency than he currently has in taking Ukraine. Ukraine is the victim of an aggressive war. Putin has invaded multiple countries during his long rule to expand his power. Letting him have Ukraine will not make him stop. Neville Chamberlain lived to see his mistakes. Trump will likely too. And before someone says, well, I don't want Americans to die for Ukraine, let me be clear. I signed up with the specific goal of defending my country from actual threats. I'm not talking about your standard issue threats from the Middle East. I'm talking about near-peer threats such as Russia and China. Seeing my president support Putin has me enraged. I want to be clear here. I do not love Ukraine. It is still a corrupt place involved in money laundering and taking advantage of U.S. tax dollars. I support Ukraine for one reason. They are currently the ones making our global adversaries bleed. If Russia invaded Afghanistan tomorrow, I would support arming the Taliban again. Trump's actions show that we no longer have the might or willingness to confront our near-peer enemies. This is a disgrace. Story 38. My honest turning point as a first-time voter would be if we got involved in a foreign conflict or if the prices of goods and services do not decrease by the midterm elections. I would then likely vote for Democrats in the midterms. Story 39. His attempt to steal his re-election is what did it for me. I voted for him in 2020, but he lost to Biden. It was disappointing for me, but then he went on a tirade online, claiming that they should have stopped counting ballots, that it was rigged, and that he absolutely won. Then the events of January 6th occurred. So, I didn't vote for him in 2024. Story 40. My youngest nephew was a supporter of Trump, depending on how much misinformation his father had been filling his head with. He is no longer supportive due to how hateful people have become, emboldened by the anti-trans sentiments. His brother is queer and dresses very effeminately. One could easily assume he is transgender, and my younger nephew is really scared that someone might hurt him. He should have seen it coming, but as much as I love him, he has never been very good at thinking more than one step ahead. The first fight he ever got into was defending his brother from bullies when he was about 6 years old, and he hasn't stopped defending him since, so it's not like he doesn't know he is an easy target. Story 41. If I were conservative, why would I want to post a response after reading what everyone has written here? Your question is quite interesting. It is disappointing that everyone is so inhospitable to one another. At the very least, creating spaces to listen to each other means learning about those you oppose so you can confront them. This breeds ill will for no reason and is both foolish and wasteful. Story 42. Someday the true story of Donald Trump's Russian connection will be told, and it will read like a spy novel worthy of Tom Clancy. It's the story of a beauty pageant that led to the election of a president. In November of 2013, Donald Trump held the Miss Universe contest in Moscow. At the time, Trump was deeply in debt, and after 5 bankruptcies, no bank in America would lend him money. For a week, Mr. Trump and a bevy of the most beautiful women in the world partied with influential figures in Russia, including politicians, oligarchs, rock stars, celebrities, and even Vladimir Putin himself. There has been much speculation about what transpired during that week of indulgence and wealth, but whatever it was, it changed the course of history. A few months later, the Trump Organization received a massive infusion of cash from Deutsche Bank, a German banking giant that has routinely paid millions in fines for illegally laundering money for the Russians. Trump left Moscow with the financial backing he so desperately needed, and Putin had his hooks in Trump. In 2015, Trump announced his candidacy for President of the United States, and Putin began actively cultivating his asset. The Mueller report states unequivocally that Russia conducted a systematic misinformation campaign designed to tarnish Trump's opponents and promote his candidacy. Russia's influence in the 2016 election was pervasive, and it worked. With Putin's help, Donald J. Trump became the 45th president of the United States, and he wasted no time paying off the debt he owed to his friend Vladimir. Trump spoke glowingly of him every chance he got, and every executive decision benefited Putin. He ceded the Middle East to Russia, withdrew from Syria, and allowed Putin to fill the void. He turned his back on Ukraine, the last bastion standing between Russia and a free Europe. He disavowed the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the alliance that had held Russia at bay for over 70 years. He pulled U.S. troops out of Germany, something the Kremlin has always wanted. At the Helsinki summit, Trump chose to publicly believe Putin over his own intelligence agencies. He attacked America's friends and embraced her enemies, just as Vladimir wanted. At home, Trump became the divider-in-chief, driving deep divisions between the different factions of American society. To divide America from within and to drive a wedge between blacks and whites, rich and poor, left and right has long been a part of Putin's KGB playbook. Russian hackers are inflaming racial tensions across the country, infiltrating radical groups, and planting disinformation on social media. We can only hope that U.S. intelligence services are prepared to address this threat, because obviously Mr. Trump isn't. Story 43. This question was directed at Trump supporters, but most of the replies consist of insults aimed at them. You need to work on your communication skills. Share your thoughts, not those of others, but please refrain from commenting if you are not a Trump supporter. Story 44. I never considered myself a Trump supporter, but everyone treated me like one because I always felt that a lot of the anti-Trump rhetoric was exaggerated. That said, the way he has turned his back on Ukraine is a red line for me. Story 45. J.D. Vance's emphasis on gratitude was unnecessary and unsettling. It seems he is just another troubling individual. Story 46. For me, sending Americans to a pointless foreign war in Gaza. Legitimately seeking a third term, the events of January 6th took me a while to get over, even though there was a lot of misinformation surrounding that election. Mass imprisonment of transgender people or another largely innocent group. Illegal immigrants do not count. I'm sure there are others, but that's a good start. He is an imperfect politician, but I believe he gets more of the things I want done than the alternatives. Story 47. I used to support Trump and had Trump supporters as parents. I lost all respect for him after he announced that he would stop supporting Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. Story 48. As an actual non-flaky supporter of Donald Trump, here's my answer. Trump has already accomplished a lot and is working hard to fulfill his campaign promises. So, no single instance of a letdown would make me stop supporting him. It would have to be something very significant. The three that come to mind are 1. If Trump refuses to step down at the end of his presidency. 2. If Trump starts ignoring court orders and the Constitution while abusing his power. He is nowhere near this point right now, despite what the media says. Or 3. If Trump reverses a major campaign promise, like suddenly opening the border again or deliberately starting a third world war. Obviously, there are numerous absurd scenarios one could list, such as if Trump began harming Americans. The reality is that Trump does not have my unwavering support. I support him because nearly all of his actions align with my values. Initiatives like closing the border, ending wars, reducing the size of government, and exposing corruption resonate with me. If he started taking actions that I disagreed with, I would no longer support him. I keep using do instead of say, because we all know that Trump makes all kinds of statements. I'm not going to turn on him for something he said mistakenly or awkwardly, or because his methods can be coarse and imprecise. Additionally, I don't think Trump is perfect. He has many flaws. However, I believe he is the only president in my lifetime who is actually implementing real conservative policies, which more than compensates for his shortcomings. Story 49. Cutting Social Security, eliminating Section 8 assistance, or modifying income-based repayment for student loans would significantly harm low-income individuals and vulnerable populations. Story 50. As someone living in Australia, it amazes me how people are so convinced he is the second coming of Jesus. I watched a video about how he has cut funding for the education department, and 12 states that voted for him all rely on that funding. The reporter in the video spoke to a teacher who was proud that she voted for him, but then in the same breath said she didn't vote for him to stop her funding. Story 51. This thread is infuriating. If you were once a supporter of him and have now stopped, I am happy for you and proud of you. However, the fact that there are people in this comment section who still support him despite his statements about not caring for the Constitution and human rights leaves me with no hope. I do not understand how you can support someone whose entire gimmick is, I am making wealthy individuals richer at the expense of everyone else, and I am actively harming marginalized communities for fun, unless you are also invested in hurting people. You cannot seriously have voted for him and still support him today unless you want to harm others. There is simply no other conclusion. Cannot be his economic plan, because he is currently damaging our economy. It cannot be that he is a staunch constitutionalist, as he has outlined intentions to go against that. Cannot be his foreign policy, since almost all of our long-term allies have distanced themselves from us and will likely completely disavow us after the recent disaster. Is it his stance on immigration? Is it his anti-trans and anti-queer positions? Is it his affection for Russia? What is it? What is there to support in a way that makes you feel righteous? Story 52. 1. No interference in cultural issues. I agree with the concerns regarding transgender athletes because I support basic science, but people have the right to express themselves however they choose. Therefore, there should be no laws making transgender individuals or cross-dressing illegal. No using the government or its resources for personal pride. We should not witness him starting conflicts or severing important relationships just because someone slightly disrespects him or disagrees with him. Being president requires negotiation skills. No restructuring the government or legislature to grant him more power than he deserves. There are established limits on terms served and the legal authority of the president for a reason, and if these safeguards are violated, I will be very concerned about the rise of a tyrannical state. This is obvious, but there should be no interference with constitutional rights, such as gun ownership and free speech. That should go without saying, but I voted for him to protect the nation, not his personal agenda. I will not be responding to any comments, not because I dislike anyone, but because life is quite hectic right now. Story 53. I am a supporter of Donald Trump and I appreciate everything he is doing. However, if he continues with the tariff discussions and negatively impacts the economy, I would withdraw my support. Story 54. To deny Trump and no longer support him would require his voters to deny themselves. He is their identity and culture. I don't know how they could separate from him, and that terrifies me. Story 55. I only voted for Trump in 2016 because I couldn't stand Hillary Clinton. I wanted a woman president, just not her. In 2020, Biden didn't really impress me much, so I figured I would go with the familiar choice. But then the January 6th incident happened, and I started to lose any respect I had for Trump. After his legal battles over the last few years, I voted for Harris in 2024. Story 56. It is impressive how everyone on this platform can sit here and argue about solutions when neither side has managed to solve anything in the last few decades. Left, right, center, whatever, you are all playing the same game. Pointing fingers, endlessly complaining, and convincing yourselves that your side has it figured out while the other is full of idiots. The left? Yes, they will throw out phrases like equality and justice, but how is that working out? You still cannot agree on what equality even looks like. Every debate gets hijacked by extremists who think they are changing the world by canceling a podcast. And let's not forget how well that idea to defund the police turned out. The right? Do not even get me started. You act like you have a monopoly on freedom while simultaneously trying to control every personal choice someone makes. You want to fight for small government, but you are also supporting bigger surveillance, more regulations, and demanding your morality be legislated for everyone. And please, we all know you do not actually care about the deficit. You will push for endless wars and tax cuts for the wealthy, all while calling the other side greedy. What is the plan here? Another few decades of finger-pointing? Guess what? You are both losing. The world keeps moving forward, and all you have done is stagnate, squabble over who is more right, and convince yourselves that you are winning because someone shared your meme. The more you argue, the more you look like pawns being played by people who really do not care about you, people who are laughing as you tear each other apart online. Here is a thought. What if instead of picking sides like sports teams, you actually started demanding real change? What if, instead of feeding into the drama, you stopped letting yourselves be manipulated by talking points and actually researched things that matter? I know if that sounds crazy, but I will leave you to your echo chambers and circle jerks, while the rest of us enjoy life without caring about which team is going to win this week. Story 57. He could set a pile of newborn babies on fire on live television while engaging in inappropriate behavior, and they would somehow make it about Hunter Biden's laptop. It's a cult. Story 58. For me, a red line would be if he shifted away from the issues that truly matter to Americans or took actions that threaten the country's democracy and values. Trust and integrity are key. Story 59. This entire thread features people stating that there are no answers. I came here to find actual responses, but if there are any, I cannot locate them. Story 60. If Trump continues to fund the beginning of World War III by invading Mexico or Canada and forcibly taking control of their territory, and if he sends troops to fight Russians, the situation will escalate. Even though I believe he is doing well for America, there is a reason for two-term limits. If he does not arrest the corrupt politicians who have been stealing taxpayer money for foolish purposes, I want to see these thieves sentenced to prison. Story 61. I evaluate each situation individually. He does things I like and things I do not. I am not satisfied with how he handled Zelensky, nor with his management of the Epstein files, for example. Story 62. Does it even matter if they do not support him anymore? He has caused more long-term damage to the US government in 7 weeks than anyone has in decades, and he has another 4 years left. What he is doing will set the US back decades if it is even recoverable. For my Trump supporter friends who may disagree, we enjoy a very high standard of living and purchasing power of the US dollar because of our soft power and US-led international institutions. This is something China is actively trying to circumvent. If you think life is tough now, just wait until the renminbi replaces the US dollar as the reserve currency or becomes an alternative to it. You need to look no further than the United Kingdom and its struggles with rising costs of living. Who is going to buy our US government bonds once Trump unilaterally decides he will not pay certain ones? No bonds, no more annual budget deficits. Story 63. Infringing upon speech rights involves fulfilling unhinged fantasies such as trying to remain in power after a term ends, implementing a racial hierarchy, instituting re-education camps, or arresting political opponents without probable cause. Funding a foreign war in which the United States is not a participant solely for economic gain under the guise of democracy is concerning. These would be major red lines for any president. Story 64. Trump puts us in a camp because we are different. Little do we know, scientists have already proven that diversity creates a stronger gene pool. Tribes understood, even in prehistoric times, that the benefits of bringing in new people strengthen survival. If we disagree with each other, we are considered enemies. I was mistaken, and now I realize that nothing could be further from the truth. I can change my mind and not follow Trump's anger. Story 65. Thank you to everyone for having conversations here in good faith and for being honest about their thoughts and feelings. Story 66. It is acceptable to believe a falsehood and be misled by it. There is no shame in betrayal. Individuals who have been deceived and betrayed deserve acceptance. Story 67. The bizarre and pointless aggression towards Canada was a turning point for me, whether it was empty rhetoric or not, along with the tariffs after campaigning on lower prices. There have been more issues since. For many people, the concern wasn't even him, but rather Musk's influence and behavior, and the way Dogecoin has been managed. It's interesting because eliminating unnecessary government spending should be a widely supported, nonpartisan goal, yet it has been handled poorly and very publicly. For others, it's the power grabs and talk of a third term. His voter base leans more libertarian, and small government doesn't mean indiscriminately firing federal employees. It also means limiting government power, and certainly not centralizing and strengthening it under one or two individuals. Story 68. We are beyond this. He could disrespect their family in front of them, and they would still express gratitude. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.